Hittite Empire, the world's first military power to make steel. Minoa, who built Europe's first civilization, and Mycenae, who dominated the Aegean Sea and developed advanced architecture and metalwork, bloomed brilliant civilizations. Ancient countries along the Mediterranean coast are destroyed simultaneously around 1200 BCE. It's because of the unknown enemy of politics, sea peoples, who suddenly came up from the sea and caused a catastrophe every way he passed. Foreign countries conspired on their islands. At once the land was removed and scattered in the fight. Land cut off at one time in Hittite Empire, Koti, Karchemish, Erzawa, and Alashia cannot resist their arms. They're a mysterious group of massacres called the greatest mystery in ancient history. Upon their appearance, they destroyed all civilizations and nations in the eastern Mediterranean. The ancient countries asked for help in all directions against sudden aggression, but they were helplessly destroyed. If you look at the dots that recorded the situation at the time, you can read the fear of the unknown aggressor. Sea peoples were observed send in sentinels, defend the coastal elements. Send messengers from each temple to bring bronze sacred objects. Enemies are coming and burning my country. The clay tablets found in the ancient city of Pylos give us a glimpse of the urgency of melting the gift to God. A clay tablet found in Ogarit, one of the largest commercial cities at the time, contains a description of the burning city and an urgent call for help. Not only such a small city-state, but also the huge empires Hittite Empire and Mycenae, who showed off their powerful power, collapsed helplessly. And Egypt, which barely survived, is also hit irreparably and begins its downfall. Archaeology refers to the 12th century BCE, when this series of ancient states were destroyed, so we call it the Dark Ages. According to Wilhelm Max Müller, the 19th century saw the invasion of the Sea Peoples. The most important issue of ethnography and the primitive history of the classical state. That's because there are so many lost characters and ancient relics. In any era, invaders started a war and took over the enemy's land, and then enslaved the enemy's people to build a new state and expand their power. But the Sepal was repeatedly destroyed and slaughtered, and at some point it suddenly disappeared. Just as the goal was to destroy civilization, not conquer it from the beginning, with the overwhelming military power of the time that was not allowed. The mysterious intruders who brought the glorious civilizations of the eastern Mediterranean to ruin. But little information has been revealed about the Sea People. Because all the civilizations that met the Sea People were destroyed. The name the Sea Peoples was not used since ancient times, but French Egyptologist Emmanuel de Rouget recorded the 8th year of Ramses III in 1855. The term the Sea Peoples was first used in Medinet Habu's description of the relief on the second steel tower. He focused on the battles of Ramses II and Merneptah in the former ruins instead of Medinet Habu, which is the basis of all important discussions on the Sea People, and in the process of deciphering, he identified an unidentified force that led to the destruction of Bronze Age civilization. The walls of Medinet Habu have reliefs of the fighting of the time, and we can see the invaders wearing feather hats and holding round shields and spears. Emmanuel de Rouget's relief of the Egyptian temple and the records of other contemporaries reveal that they received it or came from an island and used it as an advanced weapon, a union of many marine peoples, including Zekr, rather than a single people. But what you can see is extremely fragmentary, and the substance is unknown. And that's where it intrigued researchers and gave birth to a bunch of hypotheses. The relief of Ramses III records the appearance of the Sea Peoples as if it were an unexpected and very sudden disaster. But if you look at the records of the earlier pharaohs of Merneptah, you can see that 30 years ago, they were invaded by this type of marine community. The historian Mark van de Meerhoop once said about the Sea Peoples. It seems that the Sea People attempted to invade for centuries and then attempted a great invasion by the time of Ramses III. The structure that included carts carrying women and children's household goods in their group is reminiscent of population migration. In the Bronze Age of Mark van de Meerhoop, famine and volcanic eruptions were common, so the domino effect forced them to invade for survival. But it didn't really explain who the Sea Peoples were. Another representative hypothesis about the Sea Peoples is that they are the Philistines in the Old Testament. The Philistines, considered enemies of the Israelites, were not only famous for their sly pagan warheads, but Goliath, the giant we know very well, was the general who led the army of the Philistines. Based on the description of Goliath, who was 2 meters 90 centimeters tall and had overwhelming force, some mystics claim that the Philistines are descendants of the giant. Because the Philistines in the Bible are often described as violent and insensitive barbarians. Professor Trude Dodon, an Israeli archaeologist, gave evidence that they were a more civilized species than we imagined. Here's one interesting thing about the Philistines. The Philistines worship the sea god, Dagon. Dagon is a god who appears in Mesopotamia and other cultures, with the upper half of the body and the lower half of the body shaped like a fish. It is said that they stayed on land during the day, passed on civilization and knowledge to mankind, and returned to their hiding place, the sea, at night. And he was introduced to the earlier civilizations by Dagon, and he invaded other countries with a more advanced weapon. But all of this is a hypothesis, and nothing is recognized by academia. So despite all the hypotheses, an unidentified group that conquered and exterminated ancient countries, their exact reality and history is still veiled to this day. Who were they, then, when there were so many hypotheses?